I think I'm live. Good evening, everyone. I think. I should check that. Yes. Welcome to a Prime Minister's Questions Response. And oh dear, it's a busy week, I think. Oh dear. So, earlier today, there was supposed to be an announcement of the deal agreed upon. The agreed by Cabinet deal. At the time of Prime Minister's Questions, it had not been confirmed. This is how hard it was for Theresa May to get her Cabinet to agree to this, or agree that this is a deal worth having. Which I think is a statement of just how potentially bad it is. Thankfully, there is a draft which is 7 pages long, and we will go through it when the time comes. And yeah, it is a shambles, Godiva. It actually is. But we get to see it in the chambers first, because, yeah. What's wrong? Pull your finger out. Pull my finger out what? Don't you start. But yeah, as far as the PMQs goes, most of it is Brexit related, as expected. You hit refresh. Who, me? I'm now very confused. Have I pissed off? Am I being trolled? I'm confused. 1 second. Why is it... I know I chose the right channel. 1 second. I wonder if this is working any better. Oh, right. Right, thank you. Okay, I ended up checking the stream key because I thought I put the wrong one in. Never mind. So yeah, Brexit's the topic, and we will go through the draft after PMQs. The reason why is because obviously the revelations of what has happened since come after this. I don't want to preempt or try and imply too much until we get to it. So a lot of this and what you're going to see is going to be quite funny. And there are some politicians who will call the Prime Minister out from her own party benches, and we will of course address how this will all affect her premiership going forward, because it was supposed to have been agreed upon last night. That's how bad this could be. Okay, so let's just dive into this, okay?
Questions to the Prime Minister, Mr. Alex Burkhart.
Oh, and I haven't heard this first question. I have no idea what he asks, because I went to the shops when this was going on and came back and just scrolled to Jeremy Corbyn speaking. So let's just get his question out of the way anyway. Has anyone called Viper still CuteNet yet? No, but I don't think she has a wrench on this channel, so by all means do so.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Number one.
The Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others.
I assume that's the running joke at the fact that she was up most of last night negotiating with her cabinet to get them to agree to the 500-page agreement for the withdrawal from the EU. I can imagine that was quite the discussion. Something of interest, and I had to put a tinfoil hat on to confirm this in my head. When you call individual cabinet members to your office, knowing that you and all your advisors are going to be there with just them, that one cabinet minister, does it not sound like an attempt to bully them? You know? Maybe it's just me.
The Cabinet, Mr. Speaker, will meet this afternoon to consider the draft agreement the negotiating teams have reached in Brussels, and the Cabinet will decide on the next steps in the national interest.
Which will undoubtedly not get voted through Parliament. I'm not preempting that. I just know enough to know what's going to happen. And honestly, that's not even me messing about or joking. she has to get through Parliament with a majority. Unfortunately for her, she has to contend with the fact that she only realistically has about 200 votes. Yeah, well, there's about 600 votes in that room. So good luck to you.
I'm confident that this takes us significantly closer to delivering on what the British people voted for in the
We'll get to that at the end.
referendum. We will take back control of our borders, our laws and our money. Leave the common fisheries policy and
Right.
the common agricultural policy.
Right. Again, not trying to preempt or spoil anything.
While protecting jobs, security and the...
Yorkshire Tom, there is a 7-page version. It's much easier to use that because honestly, I'm going to be spending most of tomorrow reading that. And unless they preface it with Harry Potter and, I think I'm going to struggle. But big spoiler, I'm sure Dumbledore dies at the end of that as well.
integrity of our United Kingdom. And Mr. Speaker, I will come back to the House to update it on the outcome.
Alex Burkhart.
Yesterday saw the best wage growth figures in a decade.
That's interesting because I recall seeing something where unemployment has increased. It's all well and good bragging about or mentioning that in a somewhat flexing manner, but I do recall seeing yesterday statistics that showed unemployment was on the rise in this country.
And the best employment figures in my lifetime.
Even though they're diminishing.
Does the Prime Minister agree with me that this can only be delivered by the free market economics that unite this side of the House?
Oh dear God, the cringe. Oh God.
And not by the bankrupt socialism opposites.
Bankrupts. I was talking to... Oh, good evening, Wondering Lisa. This morning was it this morning? Yeah, I was talking to Irate Bear about this. And if Theresa May pushes through, or somehow gets through her idea for Brexit, for leaving the EU, right? If she does, Jeremy Corbyn's going to win the next general election, which will probably be in 2019. She will lose a vote of no confidence. Honestly. I will link the source. Oh, here it is. Actually, you know what? Switch back to this for a second because I want to cover it later. If I run it through a tiny URL first, I will link it in the chat. I love that just before we started this, I was watching a massive documentary on Stalin. And that's not even a joke. Thank you, Ragnarok Ulfbert. Teresa makes my penis sad for freedom. Nice accents. Very kind of you. Switch account. There we go, this one. Bugger. There we go. Right, I will put that. I linked in the chat. No, I can't link it. How could I not? Never mind. Fuck it. I'll put it in the description. It's fine. I forgot to add sources. I normally do them after, but it's fine. On its own, right at the bottom, if you refresh the page, is a tiny URL that will lead to the 7-page draft agreement. I want to go through it at the end, so I'm going to wait, and then we'll go through it then. So let's continue. Oh, if you guys are so keen on becoming a vassal state, we could invade. You do have oil, don't you? Not really. We've got gas, though. Or you could just have Scotland.
My honourable friend is absolutely right. As he references yesterday's figures, they showed more people in work than ever before. They
But unemployment is on the rise. So do you really want to brag about that?
showed the female unemployment rate at a record low, and as he says, the fastest regular wage growth in nearly a decade.
Not true.
But
Because we know for a fact that wages have stagnated. So in hindsight, it's not as much of a brag as you think it is.
can I say to my honourable friend, that is also on top of figures last week that showed our economy growing 3 times faster than the Eurozone average.
You don't suppose it's because the Eurozone economy is a stagnant one born out of stagnation and meant to exist solely to stagnate because it's just a single market. How do you grow something that exists on itself It has no diversity at all. It's just, it is stagnation. It's basically socialism. No, it's not really, but you know what I mean. Thank you, /.dash. I recognise that donation.
The share of jobs on low hourly pay at a record low, and the number of children in workless households at a record low. But you only get that by good conservative management of the economy.
You know what I hate about the first, or normally it's there's always one or two questions before the opposition speak. One of them's always a plant. Now, I assume... Oh dear God. We're doing this again, are we? Thank you, /.dash. I assume that the reason this question is planted is because of how shit things are about to get. Because it's really not good. And there's always a plant. It's there just to make Theresa look good. It's just weak. It's pantomime at this point. So anyway, Jeremy Corbyn's about to start. And yes, it's all Brexit. So... Yay.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 2 years of bungled negotiations, from what we know of the government's deal, it's a failure in its own terms. It doesn't deliver a Brexit for the whole country.
I would point out... Oh. Thank you. We know that at this moment in time, all Jeremy Corbyn had was a few leaks that came through the Times last night. That's all we had. I spoke about it on Bear's stream this morning, which, if anyone knows about his channel update, they'll know that doesn't happen. Okay, he's unlisted it, so good luck getting it. But... Oh God. I need to change that zombie back to a squid thing. Dare the tentacle gif. I swear I had it at that. Thank you again, /.dash. We know that what was it? We know that all he had to go by was the fact that it was a bunch of quotes that many have heard, that we wouldn't become a vassal state. We would become a slave state instead because of what was leaked at the time. And it was just assumption. So a lot of this is only assumption. The Labour Party have not seen the draft yet, which is one of those things of quite interesting because they only get to see what the analysts for the his allotments are going to suffer, and potentially his jam will too, maybe chutney, and I like chutney. I think with the they only get to see what the analysts let them see. So they only get to analyse... Thank you again, /.dash. Which means that they themselves... It's not unlisted, just moved to... Oh, he's just moved it. Thank you for correcting me. I'll link it below later for anyone that's interested. With... What was it? Oh, God, you derailed me. Oh, yeah, so basically the Tories will then decide what anyone else can see. Hopefully, they'll just let everyone see the agreement as it is. Because quite frankly, at this point... What is it you want, /.dash? They basically, hopefully they'll get to see all of it, so they can then make a truly informed decision. I think that's only right. I'm not saying this should go to the people's vote. That's something many people are pushing for. If this is as bad as many think it is, then you should just give it to them.
Breaches! If necessary, I'll say it again and again to members on both sides of the House. Voices must be heard. I happen to...
Oh, he wants a wrench. Okay, well, I can do that for once. I can do that. Give me a second. I can do that just this once. There you go. You can have a wrench for now. You're welcome. Right, so yes.
No,
by the way, this is what he's about to say is the single most, teacher to children thing you're ever going to hear.
Visitors from overseas in the gallery. Let's try to impress them. Order, not merely with our liveliness, but with our courtesy. Mr.
I feel like I should be wearing my school uniform for this.
Jeremy Corbyn.
It breaches the Prime Minister's own red lines.
ones that we'd all heard about many times. They were that we would leave the single market, we would leave the customs union, we would leave the common fisheries policy, the common agricultural policy. In fact, we would leave a lot of things. William Hague this morning was on Radio 4, and I believe he said things like, did you really think we'd leave the EU without making compromises? And that we would be worse off because of Brexit than we would be without it. William Hague, everyone, doing his very bold best to, just try and soften the blow a bit.
It doesn't deliver a strong economic deal that supports jobs and industry. And
he doesn't know this yet again. If he's basing this on the Chequers agreement, then yes, he's right. Not schoolgirl, man. Don't assume my gender. That's just sexist. Patriarch, time him out. Time that cunt out. That's hate speech.
we know they haven't prepared seriously for no deal. So does...
That's actually quite an interesting point. Because when the, as many of you know, when the referendum took place, no one planned for Leave winning. No one did. Nobody planned at all. Nino. Because of that, when it happened, everyone was in disarray. They didn't know what to do because they had not considered... Hello, James Woodwright. They couldn't think or fathom this winning. It did win. And it's the same thing here. I don't think they can fathom the idea of a no deal, which is better than a bad deal, which we will get to later.
The Prime Minister still intend to put a false choice to Parliament between her botched deal or no deal?
Prime Minister!
Important question, because the deal, based on what we knew at the time from last night with the leaks, it did come across as a bad deal, to the point where Jacob Rees-Mogg, Boris Johnson and the DUP held a press conference last night. And what I'll do is I'm going to quickly go find it on Twitter, because I know it was there, and then I'll just screen share that if I can. So let's have a look. Jacob Rees-Mogg. It shouldn't take long. Videos. Let's go for that, because he said.
Isn't so much struggle.
Right. Let's pull this out here and copy that over here. We go down to this video here. This is the one we want.
A deal has surrendered to Brussels and given in to them on everything that they want, and tried to frustrate Brexit, that it is not so much the vassal state anymore as the slave state.
So what would you like to see the Cabinet...
That is the key quote from all of this, and it is very important that it be acknowledged. That was something from, I think, last night? Yeah, it was from last night. I believe there were more today, so we'll certainly get to those. Deal or no deal. They are spot on. They are absolutely spot on. So let's continue with this.
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman that he's wrong in the description that he set out, but can I also say to him...
We'll find out later.
Time and time again, he has stood up in this House and complained and said that the government isn't making progress, the government isn't anywhere close to a deal. Now, when we're making progress and close to a deal, he's complaining about that.
Probably because we still believe that you're pushing through with Chequers, which has been absolutely destroyed by everyone, including the EU. Although, as of this evening, Michel Barnier did say, and I have an article somewhere, he hails the deal as positive progress. No, that was senior MEP Guy Verhofstadt. But Barnier said the deal is a crucial and decisive step to achieving Brexit after months of intense negotiations. But they also accept there's still a lot of work to be done. And there was a picture of him running his fingers through this 500-page document. Maybe they should have gotten J.K. Rowling to write it.
Can I just say, I think what that clearly shows is that he and the Labour Party have only one intention. That is to frustrate Brexit and betray the vote of the British people.
I would argue that he has every right to do that if the deal is not in the best interest of the people, on the grounds that it represents the vote. if what you do gets put through and it is led to be believed that it is in fact what turns us into a slave state, then it's quite right that he frustrate it. And I do believe that one of the problems she's going to face is that she's got to get enough votes to pass it through Parliament. But as many know, currently, as far as MEPs go, there are 315 Conservatives, 10 members of the DUP. They hold the government up, so they have a majority only because of the DUP. Labour have 257, the SNP have 35, the Lib Dems 12, and there are 21 others for like independents. The problem now arises is that there are only 156 MPs that are loyal to the government and will vote with her. 80 are hardcore Brexiteers. 74 are moderates that might vote with the government but might also want to destroy Theresa May and force an election. And then there are 5 unrepentant Remainers who are more than likely going to vote with the PM but are somewhat on the fence. Then you've got the DUP who will vote against the deal unless the Prime Minister can persuade them that her deal does not put a border in the Irish Sea. 237 loyalists to Labour of the 257 will vote against the Prime Minister's deal because they're Corbyn's loyalists. There are 20 left and they'll vote with the Prime Minister, although those numbers could go up to 45 depending on a few circumstances, I guess. And then the other 60, SNP will vote against it, as will most Lib Dems and Plaid Cymru, which will also include the Green MP, 2 suspended Tories and 2 Brexiteer ex-Labour MPs. This does not give her a majority in the House. If her plan, once read and approved by the Cabinet and seen by everyone else, goes to Parliament and they scrutinise it and they debate it, because they don't have long to do that either, and fuck me, I'm going to take great pleasure going through all of that. It is based on the statistics, highly unlikely she'll get the deal of Chequers especially through Parliament. Yeah, it might not pass the House. It's unlikely. It depends on if Labour are willing to concede on it. But that most people have believed anyway that she would have to get Labour on board to get this through the House anyway. So that's not surprising. The DUP and the hardline Brexiteers will not vote in favour of this if it is anywhere near as bad as it is now being speculated, and we will of course make our own informed decision near the end.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Well, Mr. Speaker, after the utter shambles of the last 2 years of negotiations, the Prime Minister should look to herself in this. And she hasn't managed to convince quite a lot of people behind her.
One of them will ask a question after Corbyn's. I honestly, 2 weeks ago this guy was giving her praise and now he's shitting on her. It's brilliant.
The Rail Minister!
The Rail Minister was Joe Johnson, Boris Johnson's brother, who is a Remainer who resigned recently, as I mentioned in a video I covered on Brexit.
The Rail Minister resigned last week, saying to present the nation with a choice between 2 deeply unattractive outcomes, vassalage and chaos, is a failure of British statecraft on a scale unseen since the Suez Crisis, and that from a Tory MP. Last night, the EU's lead Brexit negotiator...
To be fair, Joe Johnson's a bit of a moderate, to be honest.
...reportedly told the 27 European ambassadors the UK...
It might well be a cricket ball round her neck, yes.
...must align their rules, but the EU will retain all the controls.
This was in Chequers, and I am disgusted to an extent that this was never argued sooner. Honestly, when Chequers first came out, this is something he could have hammered her 4 weeks back, but he didn't. He focused on other things, which he's well within his right to do. But this was a huge, gaping gap, hole, wound, doodah, in the whole Chequers plan. It was a mistake.
Is that a fair summary of the Prime Minister's deal?
Prime Minister!
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, as I have said all along throughout these negotiations, what we are doing is negotiating a good deal for the United Kingdom. We're negotiating... We're negotiating a deal that delivers on the vote of the British people, that
Lie.
takes back control of our money law and borders, that ensures we leave the common fisheries policy, we leave the customs union, we leave the common agricultural policy.
Later on, we're going to come to our own decision on those, but she states it again.
But we protect jobs, we protect security, and we protect the integrity of the United Kingdom.
The only way you do that, truly, is to stay in them. Just saying.
Jeremy Corbyn! Mr. Speaker, under the Prime Minister's deal, we're going to spend years with less say over our laws or how our money is spent.
That transition period, though, huh?
And the International Trade Secretary said last week the decision to withdraw
No, you didn't, Socky. They're just bitching about Brexit.
from any backstop agreement could not be contracted to somebody else. Can the Prime Minister confirm whether under her deal it will be the sovereign right of the UK Parliament to unilaterally withdraw from any backstop?
This is in reference to the fact that there was a remark that we couldn't withdraw from certain issues, policies that were agreed upon prior to our leaving the EU, without the approval of an independent body that would feature both Brits and EU members, who would then vote on this issue. Who they are and how they're selected is a mystery, but the fact is then we wouldn't be allowed to leave something without their approval, and that is an absolute farce.
Prime Minister!
I say to the right honourable gentleman, there needs to be a backstop as an insurance policy.
Unfortunately, with a backstop, and this is quite annoying, that is not a permanent solution. It is, and it is agreed upon, a temporary solution. Good luck coming up with a good one. I still maintain mine's the best one. I'm happy to sacrifice Dankula for this. We'll give them Scotland if they give us Ireland. Press 1 if you agree. And press F for respect to losing Dankula.
There needs to be a backstop as an insurance policy, but neither side actually wants us to be in that backstop because we want to bring the future relationship into place.
Yeah, so Jacob Rees-Mogg suggested paying them a no deal and giving them 20 billion as like a goodwill gesture. He suggests a no deal and 20 billion. It's more of a way of softening them so we can then just start again with trade and all that. Nothing happened to Dankula. I'm suggesting we give him up. Give him and Scotland up, and we get Ireland, so Scotland can get what it wants and stay in the EU, and we can just have Ireland as a part of the United Kingdom. Because seriously, let's do that instead.
At the end of December 2020. And I'm aware of the concerns that there are, that we don't want to be in a position where the European Union would find it comfortable to keep the United Kingdom in the backstop permanently. And that's why...
Which we all know cannot happen.
Any backstop has to be temporary.
It's already agreed that it's temporary. This isn't... You haven't answered the question.
Jeremy
She didn't... That was a really important question as well.
Corbyn!
Mr. Speaker, I think that non-answer has confirmed that Parliament won't have that sovereign right.
We'd need to give them Northern Ireland because we have that country and not Ireland. That might piss off a few Irish people.
Mr. Speaker, the International Trade Secretary breezily declared he'd have 40 trade deals ready to be signed the second after midnight when we leave the EU.
Yeah, I'd love to know who the countries are with. I can only name one, maybe two, that we'd have a trade deal with. He sounds like he belongs in an auction house.
How's it going?
Well, with 4 months to go, can the Prime Minister tell us exactly how many of these 40 deals have been negotiated?
To answer the question in the chat about... where is it? Oh, fuck it. My chat hasn't moved for a while. Give me a second. There was a question of importance that I really wanted to cover. Yeah, pop chat. Why are we giving them money? Because in the joint report in December, we agreed to do so for X amount of years, and that depends on the transition period as well. So if we're in one for 4 years, we pay certain fees and invest in things for that long. Oh, excuse me, for that long.
Prime Minister!
We are doing two things. First of all, we are negotiating to ensure that we maintain the trade deals that currently exist with the European Union when we leave the...
Order. I'm sorry. It's not acceptable for members to shout at the Prime Minister when she's...
I would love to give them the SNP. I really would. That'll be fun.
Answering question. We've been talking recently in this chamber about respect and good behaviour on
Only because you've been outed as a bully.
both sides. The person who has the floor must be heard. And that's the end of the matter. The Prime Minister.
We have been negotiating on two fronts. We're negotiating on the continuity agreements, which ensure that those trade deals that we've been party to as a member of the European Union are able to continue when we leave the European Union. And we have also started discussions with other countries about the trade deals that we can forge across the world once we leave the European Union. But I say to the Right Honourable Gentleman, if he's interested in trade deals, he really needs to sort out the Labour Party's position on this issue.
Yeah, this one's quite weird. I have to point out this is quite annoying. So, in one sense, he said that there is no reversing Brexit. For Keir Starmer, the shadow Brexit secretary, Sir Keir Starmer, to say that it can be reversed. And then Emily Thornberry also saying something to that similar, I believe, as well. There's no continuity. Well, there's no alignment. It's quite surprising, to be honest.
Because originally they said that they wanted to do trade deals around the rest of the world. Now he says he wants to be in the customs union. That would stop him from doing trade deals around the rest of the world. We know what's good for this country, an independent trade policy and trade deals, good trade deals with Europe and with the rest of the world.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Mr. Speaker, the International Trade Secretary is not the only one who doesn't understand international trade rules. And he's not the only one in the Cabinet. And he's not the only one in the Cabinet that doesn't understand a few things. The Brexit Secretary said last week, and I quote...
Oh, this part was genius. This cracked me up. I live near Dover. Hearing Dominic Raab say this was fucking brilliant. And thank you /.dash for the 79 pence. I saw it.
Quote, I hadn't previously understood the extent of this, but we are particularly reliant on the Dover to Calais crossing. When did the Prime Minister become aware of this absolutely shocking revelation about Britain's trade routes?
Yeah, this was pretty stupid, considering we have a number of ports.
The Prime Minister!
I really have to say to the Right Honourable Gentleman, he stands here and reads out something that says that we don't know about trade policy. We do know about trade policy. That's exactly why we're negotiating the continuity agreements. It's why we'll be taking our place as an independent state in the World Trade Organization. But he wants to talk about different positions that are being taken. What we're doing is delivering a good deal that would deliver on the vote of the British people. We're delivering Brexit.
Lies.
What have we seen recently from the Labour Party? Well, the Labour leader said we can't stop Brexit.
Which is good. It's just a shame that people like Tony Blair believe it should be stopped because reasons. And has even gone so far as to kind of align himself with Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg because of the state of this deal being so bad that even the warmonger himself has to step in and say this is shit.
The shadow Brexit secretary said we can stop it. So when he stands up, he should make it clear. Is it Labour Party policy to stop Brexit?
It's PMQs, he doesn't have to say shit.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Mr. Speaker!
Oh, and notice, she didn't answer the question again. Oh, this is sad.
Labour respects the result of the referendum.
Thank you, Socky. Sock requires you use text-to-speech. Yes. Text-to-speech. I should probably get some soundboards of the Emperor talking.
What we don't respect is the shambolic mess that this government has made.
Blair will continue to fail, Prospero, because Blair fucked it with Iraq and Afghanistan. And his policies were actually embarrassing.
Negotiations. The mess they've created that they can't now get themselves out of. Yeah. We won't let them destroy this country's economy or the jobs and life chances of so many others.
Well, I'll be honest, we the public did that because we voted to leave the EU, which flies in the face of what you want, even if you really think about it. Technically, he's a Brexiteer. He won't say it because he's in charge of a party and he has to think like a politician, but his career is very much anti-EU.
And Mr. Speaker, if the Brexit Secretary is still in office by the time the Cabinet meets this afternoon, could she take him on one side and have a quiet word with him and tell him that 10,000 lorries arrive at Dover every day, handling 17% of this country's entire trade in goods, estimated to be £122 billion last year. This woeful ignorance by a person in high office is disturbing to so many people.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
This government, Mr. Speaker, has spent 2 years negotiating a bad deal that will leave the country in an indefinite...
Thank you, /Dash, for the £9.99 to suck the tentacles. Yes, suck them.
...definite halfway house without a real say. Yet they think they can impose a false choice on Parliament between a half-baked deal or no deal, when a sensible alternative plan could bring together...
No matter how long it takes, the right honourable gentleman will not be shouted down in the House of Commons. It's as simple and unarguable as that.
You notice the that pause face. 3 times today he has had to stand up. 3 times. That's amazing. It's really childish as well.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, when a sensible alternative plan could bring together Parliament and the country. Even Conservative MPs say the Prime Minister is offering a choice between the worst of all worlds and a catastrophic series of consequences.
The problem now is, though, Jeremy, is that we have the possibility of a bad deal or a no deal. And then, as you'll put it, a no deal is a bad deal. So essentially, 2 bad deals on the table. I know your suggestion is to call for a general election so you can be in charge and negotiate, but the negotiating period is coming to an end. So what do we do? Because we're really stuck now. Before we continue, if you're at all, quotes, enjoying this, could you please slap a like on this stream? It kind of helps.
When will the Prime Minister recognise that neither of these options is acceptable?
Thank you, Socky. Bidding wars are dumb. They are indeed. It's very generous of you, by the way. Wait, Minecraft? Holy shit, I didn't know that existed.
Minister! The right honourable gentleman talks about woeful ignorance. I'll tell him where the woeful ignorance lies.
It was a bit of a wasted question from Jeremy there.
Lies on a Labour Party front bench that thinks you can build a better economy by spending £1,000 billion more.
Why say that? Why not say... I mean, you may as well put your little finger to the bottom corner of your mouth at that point. Why don't you just say £1 trillion? That's it. We're not going higher. It's not quadrillions or anything like that. It's trillion. That's it. It's obviously, I'm not saying it's denigrate the amount. That's a phenomenal amount of money to waste, and I say it because of what he intends to do, as I don't believe it truly, deals with the issues. They're not. No, they're not worth as much pounds.
Putting up people's taxes and destroying jobs. The real threat to jobs and growth in this country sits on the Labour Party front bench. And I'll tell him what we're delivering in relation to Brexit. He says, what about Brexit? Yes, I'll tell him what we're delivering on Brexit. We will not...
It was Prospero, but unfortunately, yeah.
...rerun the referendum. We will not renege on the decision of the British people.
We will get to that soon.
We will leave the customs union, we will leave the common fisheries policy, we will leave the common agricultural policy, and we will take back control of our money, laws and borders. We will deliver Brexit, and the United Kingdom is leaving the European Union on the 29th of March 2019.
Mr. Peterbone!
Right, this... Oh, this is good. Hang on. I just need to stretch out, crack all the tentacles and give them a good old stretch. Oh yes, everyone, start rubbing. Start rubbing. You're going to love this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the Prime Minister aware?
Thank you for the £2 donation, Wire Monster. She's snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Well, Theresa May is very good at the art of losing. It's not something she's very, I don't know, she seems uncomfortable at the thought of doing something that works for the majority of the people when her interests and the majority of politicians' interests are not in alignment with the people. So thank you for the donation.
Aware that if the media reports about the EU agreement are in any way accurate, you are not delivering the Brexit people voted for. And
I actually couldn't believe this guy said this. I sat and watched it and I tweeted about it. I couldn't believe it. Bear then told me on Twitter that they were talking about stabbings. I was obviously 15 minutes behind. And stabbing, the crime, it needs to be tackled. But this guy, maybe 3 weeks ago, he was piling plaudits on Theresa May for what she was doing.
And today, you will lose the support of many Conservative MPs and millions of voters across the country.
Prime Minister!
I could not believe he did that. Honestly, mad respect. I have to... Yeah, I'm just going to put in the chat R for respect. Because I couldn't believe he actually said that. I was absolutely astounded. So I have to admit, I am very impressed with him. Oh, thank you for the R's. Didn't think you'd do that. I just need to quickly switch account. Give me a sec. Ah, fuck it. There. Switch account. That one. No, go back. Go back. I do apologise. But yes, words aren't enough at this stage, unfortunately. Very true, but I need to do something to protect myself. Where is it? There I am. Apparently I can't do it here. Okay, never mind. Let's continue.
Can I say to my honourable friend, can I say...
Order. Members must calm themselves. I've often advised taking some sort of soothing medicament and people may feel better in consequence.
Maybe remove the mer and meant. Simply take a dick.
I want to hear...
The pause face a minute ago was amazing. What's a pirate's favourite letter? Dad joke inbound, everyone.
What the Prime Minister has to say, and I hope the House has the courtesy to want to do so as well. The Prime Minister.
Can I say to my honourable friend that what we have been negotiating is a deal that does deliver on the vote of the British people. In the list that I set out earlier, I left out one of the things that the British people are very keen to see from this deal, which is...
I think he does mean that, Davey, but I think he said medicament because he just likes saying dick.
An end to free movement, and we will ensure that we are delivering on that as well as those other elements that I have set out. What we're doing is a deal that delivers on that vote, but in doing so protects jobs, protects the integrity of our United Kingdom and protects the security of people in this country.
Ian Blackford!
Ah, here we go. Right, so we're going to answer his 2 questions, of course we are, and then we're going to go through the 7-page document that was leaked. Also, the Prime Minister's announcement, we're going to go through that first. Why don't I get anything extra when I hit live chat? What am I supposed to... I feel like I'm missing something there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Scottish National Party, with other opposition leaders, have written to the Prime Minister, urging her to drop plans to prevent a truly meaningful vote on the Brexit deal. Shamefully, it seems that the government is seeking to prevent opposition amendments to the deal,
the paper, everyone.
effectively
there it
gagging
is.
the sovereignty of Parliament by playing...
Right, the interesting thing here, you notice he's touching the paper? Right, the really interesting thing there is, it is genuinely an OCD thing, because if it was a ream of paper, a stack of paper, it wouldn't have that fold on it. It's a document.
These tricks and procedures.
He's holding a newspaper. Come on. Or a magazine. I bet it's a comic. I bet he's a Beano man.
Can I ask the Prime Minister, what is she afraid of? Is her government so weak that the Brexit deal will not succeed when other solutions are still on the table?
I love folio tactical. I feel like, yes, he indeed is. What I like about the SNP, especially this guy, I don't like a lot of his policies, and you understand with the second question, he's a dick. But he's blunt, and I like that.
Prime Minister!
To the right honourable gentleman, we have been very clear that there will be a meaningful vote in this House. We have also been clear that the motion on the deal will be amendable. But I also say to the right honourable gentleman that I think if you went out and asked any member of the public, when the government brings a deal back from Europe, what do you expect Parliament to vote on? I think they would expect Parliament to vote on the deal.
Why are dwarves always Scottish and high fantasy? I don't know the answer to that.
Ian Blackford!
Oh, and Theresa May yet again didn't answer.
Expect Parliament to take its responsibilities, which is holding the government to account and to amend the deal. This Prime Minister is hamstrung, divided, desperate and looking defeated.
Yep.
In a total panic, the Prime Minister has been reduced to playing political games rather than playing fair. Mr. Speaker, this is not a...
Well, she has to play a game now, because the only way she's going to get it through Parliament is by begging people to get it through. And he is he's a paper offender.
The SNP will never...
He should be put on a register. But perhaps because registers usually are made of paper, make it a digital one.
Ever gamble with Scotland's future. There is only one line.
Drum roll, everyone. I'm going to let you all guess this. What is he going to suggest that the British government needs to do to protect Scotland's interests? What is he going to suggest, everyone? You should know it. You should know it because it's obvious. Because it's the only thing they have moaned about, even with Angus... Is it Angus Huddles? Angus McRoberts? Dear oh dear, the thumbs down. Oh dear God. Well, one of you's kind of got it right, but not entirely. But let's well, thermonuclear war.
Lifeline left. To protect jobs in Scotland, we must stay in the single market and the customs union.
He's not saying stay in the EU, though. Although, if you do stay in the single market and customs union, you may as well stay in the EU, because if you don't, you're obeying rules for a system you have no say over. Why does this tartan twat not seem to get that? Unintentional rhyme.
The Prime Minister will not drag Scotland out against its will. If there is a deal to protect the economy in Northern Ireland, why not Scotland?
I still maintain it. Okay, how about this? We'll give up a land space the same size as Northern Ireland, but in Scotland. Okay, how about that? But we get Ireland in return. Or a space the size of Ireland in exchange. How about that? That makes more sense, actually. I probably should have led with that.
The honourable gentleman stands up and says that the SNP will not gamble with Scotland's future. I say to him, the SNP gambles with Scotland's future every time it stands up and talks about independence.
Well, that's because they've wanted it for a long time. So, what we're going to do, we're going to come over here. We're going to play a video that has cropped up. Have I got it here? Here we are. So this video is from the Daily Mail. It is the Prime Minister announcing the agreement. And then we're going to go and have a little look at the agreement itself that we know about.
The Cabinet has just had a long, detailed and impassioned debate on the draft withdrawal agreement and the outline political declaration on our future relationship with the European Union. These documents were the result of thousands of hours of hard negotiation by UK officials and many, many meetings which I and other ministers held with our EU counterparts. I firmly believe that the draft withdrawal agreement was the best that could be negotiated, and it was for the Cabinet to decide whether to move on in the talks.
Yeah, which is why it's taken so long to get to this point. Booing in the background. Yes, okay, so there were actually protesters, and some glued themselves to the gates of Downing Street itself. That is commitment. You have to be truly committed to do that. Can we watch her dancing again? In a minute we can, yes.
The choices before us were difficult.
But not Dancing Queen, because seriously. Well, tell you what we'll do. We'll finish on her dancing, but it won't be the Dancing Queen one because I got a copyright claim on that straight away, so we'll avoid the ABBA one. We'll go for the proper dancing.
Particularly in relation to the Northern Ireland backstop. But the collective decision of Cabinet was that the government should agree the draft withdrawal agreement and the outline political declaration. This is a decisive step which enables us to move on and finalise the deal in the days ahead.
She's always looked tired. Her skin looks thin. I think most people generally in charge in any politics, they age very quickly. But in this instance, with what she's having to deal with, she was always going to look like shit by the time it was done.
These decisions were not taken.
I'm also sorry it's not louder. I can't max this out any higher.
Lightly, but I believe it is a decision that is firmly in the national interest.
Brussels has already said that this is progress, and I think they're pretty much willing to work with it, because they have a transition period then to continue negotiating bits of it. Michel Barnier has already stated he's on board with this so far.
When you strip away the detail, the choice before us is clear. This deal, which delivers on the vote of the referendum, which brings back control of our money, laws...
Yeah. Alastair Carmichael. Quality.
...and borders, ends free movement, protects jobs, security and our union, or leave with no deal, or no Brexit at all.
Which is something many people want.
I know that there will be difficult days ahead. This is a decision...
Oh shit, sorry. Hit pause.
...which will come under intense scrutiny, and that is entirely as it should be, and entirely understandable. But the choice was this deal which enables us to take...
Fucking hell, that shouting. You know what? I'm done with this. Let's move on to... Let's switch back here a second, and I'm gonna pull up a video. I'm gonna find a video first. So when I come to it later, I can just, you know, press play on it. Not pressing play on that one. That'll do. Right. So let us. That's the wrong one. This one. Here we go. This is the 7-page PDF I will link down below, or has linked there now actually. I will link the notice draft video as well. This is what many people believe to be the initial thing. Thank you, by the way, Anne, for sending this to me. I should have just gone and got it myself. Frexit. Oh dear. And yes, Yorkshire Tom, that's it actually. I've just put a tiny URL there instead because that's a big ass HTML. So, basis for cooperation. Shared values including the respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, democratic principles, the rule of law and support for non-proliferation as essential prerequisites for the future relationship. Fantastic. Reaffirmation of the United Kingdom's commitment to the European Convention on Human Rights and the Union's and its member states to the Charter of Fundamental Rights to the Union. Support for effective multilateralism. That to me, because we're committing ourselves to the European Convention on Human Rights as opposed to what was suggested, and that was us writing our own human rights bill. Instead, we are just accepting theirs. Which does indicate that since it's the European Convention on Human Rights, I don't know if that comes through the European Council or the European Union. I don't know which one's which, or if it comes through the European Court on Human Rights, because I know that they're not all the same body, which is another big problem with the European Union, is that there are things that aren't actually related to it or controlled by it. Commitment to a high level of personal data protection, commencement of the Commission's assessments of the United Kingdom's standards on the basis of the Union's adequacy framework. So, the EU will assess our standards of personal data protection. Right. Because we have to be to their standards. I know we've had a number of issues with data Analytica. Cambridge Analytica, is that what it was called? There have been leaks in the past. We all know about it. I know we're hiding somebody in an embassy, but it's not really us that's hiding him. It's Ecuador. Bastards. But it's interesting that we have to abide the EU standards on data protection. That's interesting. We'll go to the next one. Terms for the United Kingdom's participation in union programs. Now this is, I know, in reference to science-related stuff. We're investing in things as well. I knew about this. It was one of the things leaked yesterday. That's known. And dialogue and shared interest, blah blah. Goods. Comprehensive arrangements creating a free trade area combining deep regulatory and customs cooperation. That sounds eerily familiar. And we do have better data protection than the EU, oddly enough. We really do. So it's quite interesting that they get to assess our data protection when theirs isn't as good as ours. Underpinned by provisions ensuring a level playing field for open and fair competition. Well, you know where you don't get that. You don't get that in a single market. Zero tariffs, no fees, charges or quantitative restrictions across all goods sectors, with ambitious customs arrangements that build on the single customs territory provided for in the withdrawal agreement, respecting the parties' legal orders. I assume that that is as long as the transition period exists, because there's no way this will exist after the transition period. That can't happen. I'd like to know how, if it could in any case. Extent of the UK's commitments on customs and regulatory cooperation, including with regard to alignment of rules, to be taken into account in the applications of checks and controls at the border. This was in the Checkers Agreement, where we would align ourselves with the EU's rules, customs rules. Oh god, the Article 13 shit though. I'll get to that later, /dot. Just remind me in about 5-10 minutes. We still have to align ourselves with their rules, but we don't get a say on them. What's the fucking point? At that point, I'd accept the fucking tariff. In this context, recalling the Union's and the United Kingdom's intention to replace the backstop solution on Northern Ireland by a subsequent agreement that establishes alternative arrangements for ensuring the absence of a hard border on the island of Ireland on a permanent footing. Yeah, this is going to take some time, and what really... What I really hope for is them not to continue putting Ireland on such a pedestal. Sorry, Northern Ireland. Excuse me. Ambitious, comprehensive and balanced arrangements on trade and services and investments, delivering a level of liberalisation in trade and services well beyond the parties' WTO commitments, World Trade Organization commitments, and in line with Article 5 of the General Agreement on Trade and Services, with substantial sectoral coverage covering all modes of supply and providing for the absence of substantially all discrimination in the covered sectors, with exceptions and limitations as appropriate. Yeah, I heard about that fact more. I saw the tweet. I retweeted it actually because it disturbed me. And as far as what I'm seeing so far, the word fuck is appearing in my head a lot. Provisions on market access and national treatment under host state rules, ensuring that the parties, service providers and investors are treated in a non-discriminatory manner, including with regard to establishment, while preserving regulatory autonomy, provisions to promote regulatory approaches that are transparent, efficient, compatible to the extent possible, and which promote avoidance of unnecessary regulatory requirements. Good luck with that. appropriate arrangements on professional qualifications. I need that to be embellished upon because I know we have some of the best qualifications in the world. So I can't imagine the EU for a second being able to posture that theirs are better than ours. Get fucked. It's okay, Squidness. I'm sure most of your fan base isn't located outside the EU and England. Yes, I'm well aware that the majority of mine are actually in America. The only issue I would have is proving the copyright of the visual imagery is mine. This part, yeah, I'd never be able to do this. I'd have to read from my hand. Or from a screen, and you'd have to take my word from it. Let's see. Provisions to enable free movement of capital and payments related to transactions liberalised under the economic partnership, subject to relevant exceptions. I'd like to know what they are. For commitments to preserving financial stability, market integrity, investor protection and fair competition while respecting the parties' regulatory and decision-making autonomy. This word, yeah, and make their ability to take equivalence decisions in their own interest. Yeah, I reckon we can't do that. This is without prejudice to the parties' ability to adopt and maintain any measure where necessary for prudential reasons. Bullshit. Commencement of equivalence assessments by both parties as soon as possible under the United Kingdom's withdrawal from the Union, endeavouring to include before the end of June 2020, the transition period. I don't know facts more, I really don't. Close and structured cooperation on regulatory supervisory matters grounded in economic partnership and based on the principles of regulatory autonomy, transparency and stability, recognising this is in the parties' mutual interest. Right. Digital, now this is the interesting one. Provisions to facilitate electronic commerce and cross-border data flows address unjustified barriers to trade by electronic means and ensure an open, secure and trustworthy online environment with a bilateral dialogue and joint work in multilateral, multi-stakeholder forums while not affecting the parties' data protection rules. So there's no real mention on whether or not we would, certainly in this statement here, there is no real mention or implication on things like Articles 11 and 13 on whether we would align with that. Mention of intellectual property, so that's just bollocks really. Mobility, so we have arrangements on temporary entry and stay, along with mobility based on non-discrimination between the union members. Pfft, nonsense really. Transport, I don't really care about this. But I do know there is reference to maritime transport, and we're going to get to the fishing part soon. Energy, framework to facilitate technical cooperation between electric and gas network operators and organisations in the planning and the use of energy infrastructure connecting the party systems. It's just nonsense at this point. This is so vague. This actually bugs me now. The fishing one. Okay, so we're going to leave the common fisheries policy. You heard Theresa May say that earlier, right? Okay. Why am I getting congested? Doesn't matter. Cooperation bilaterally and internationally to ensure fishing at sustainable levels. Good. Promote resource conservation and foster a clean, healthy and productive marine environment. Noting that the United Kingdom will be an independent coastal state while preserving regulatory autonomy, cooperation on the development of measures for the conservation, rational management and regulation of fisheries in a non-discriminatory manner, close working with our coastal states and in international fora, including to manage shared stocks. Within the context of the overall economic partnership, establishment of a few... I'm losing my ability to speak. Establishment of a new fisheries agreement on inter alia, access to waters and quota shares. What the fuck was that? Let me check Discord for a second. Did someone just make noise in my ear? I have no idea what that was. Doesn't matter. It is a repackagement of the old agreement. This is, and by the way, I've read the rest here on foreign policy, thematic cooperation. Okay, information stuff I got. This actually is vague. If this is what Labour get, by the way, not the 500-page agreement, Labour should vote it down on the grounds that this is vague. There is nothing substantial in this, and it does come across as us bending over. It is linked below. Oh, it's starting, is it? That's fine, because I'm finishing. So, yes, before I finish, as promised, I am going to play us out with this. So, thank you all very much for joining, and have a lovely evening.